Hi guys, it's Alexa, and today I'm here to bring you my second wrap-up for the month of September. As you can see, I'm kind of casual and comfy today, and I feel like it's because it's been so dreary and so cold lately. Anyway, we're here to talk about books, so let's get started. First book I read in the second half of September was Cloud Wish by Fiona Wood, and this just has such a cute cover. This is the third novel in her 6 Impossiverse series, which is a set of companion novels, and this one focuses on Van Oak. I don't really know how to pronounce it, which I feel really bad about. But anyway, she is a scholarship student at this prestigious private school, and she's trying to balance being among her peers who are mostly well-to-do and the life that she actually leads at home with her not so well-to-do family. The book actually centers around a wish that she makes regarding a boy that she likes, and the boy starts to like her back. And it's not just a love story, even though that's part of it, like there's a romance in it. It's actually a lot about how she has to deal with all of these different feelings she's having and like doubts she's having about her future, about her choices, about her life. And it's just really interesting. Of all the novels that I've read from Fiona Wood, which basically is everything she's written, I really enjoyed this one. I think it was because I could see a lot of my own experiences in the main characters, and I really enjoyed that a lot. I gave this one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was one of our Friends with ARCs reads, and if you don't know what Friends with ARCs is, it's a feature that I do with my friend Rachel from Hello Chelly, where we both read some of the review copies we got together, and then we review them on the same day and ask a question related to the book. And the book in question is A Darkly Beating Heart by Lindsay Smith. It's about a very angry and vengeful young teenager. She's Japanese, and her parents send her to Tokyo to work through her issues. When she goes there, she actually visits a historic village and somehow ends up time traveling back into the past and inhabiting the body of a different girl named Miyu, who is equally vengeful and angry and just out to get the world. And this is the story of how the main character, Reiko, basically tries to come to terms with her own anger and guilt and sorrow, and also has to come to terms with Miyu's anger and guilt and sorrow. It's really short, which worried me at first, but I think it's actually a pretty well told story. I will say that the main character is definitely unlikable because she's so angry and she's so bitter, and like she makes bad choices, but I think that's part and parcel of what she's going through and what she's suffering, and I think Lindsay Smith just portrays it in such a way that's really interesting. Throw in all these Japanese elements and like a parallel story, a story that parallels Reiko's story almost, and I just really enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. And so I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book is Shiny Broken Pieces by Sona Charapotra and Danielle Clayton, and this is the sequel to Tiny Pretty Things. And Tiny Pretty Things is basically a bad ballerina story. It follows 3 points of view, Gigi, June, and Bette, and they're all ballerinas at the American Ballet Conservatory, vying for, you know, prestige and roles and hopefully one day a job with a company. And this is just the continuation of their story after what happens in Tiny Pretty Things. I am so glad I finally read it. I really enjoyed seeing how they explored what went on in the different girls' heads after the events of Tiny Pretty Things, and I think that they did justice to the different emotions that they might have felt and the different reactions they might have had, and I really liked how this one wraps up as well. So it's really a satisfying ending, and that's all I could have wanted from it. So I gave this one a 3.75 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is one of my Kindle books, and that book is Smut by Karina Hale. And this is basically the story of Amanda and Blake. They're classmates in a writing class in university, and they are paired together to do a project, which is where they discover that they write really well together. And after the class is over, Blake comes up with a proposal that they team up to write smut together so that they can make a lot of money and just keep writing together. And of course, a romance blossoms at some point. And of course, there's like a lot of other conflict going on. And while I really love the start and like the build up into their relationship, I didn't love this book. This is probably my least favorite Karina Hale book that I've ever read. And I think it's because I just didn't like how quickly the big, you know, fight, the big climax came and how quickly it was resolved. I don't know, it just made me feel weird. Yeah, I ended up giving that one a 2.25 out of 5 stars. The next book I read, I was actually on the blog tour for, so I'll link my review down below, and it's Like a River Glorious by Ray Carson, and this is the second book in the Gold Seer trilogy. The first book is Walk on Earth a Stranger, and it basically tells the story of Leah Westfall as she travels from Savannah, Georgia, I think it's Savannah, Georgia, to California to follow all the people who are headed that way because of the gold rush. And I'm happy to say that I also really enjoyed the second book in this series. This book is basically the story of what happens after Leah and her friends have finally made it to California and they're starting to settle in and look for gold. It's about their future, but it's also about Leah's past coming back to haunt her in the form of her very, very selfish Uncle Hiram. And I just really loved how the story continued. I was really happy to be reunited with all these characters, and I tremendously enjoyed seeing how it ended. And I actually don't know what the third book is gonna be like, because it ended pretty solidly in this book, so I guess we're gonna have to wait and see, but I am eagerly anticipating it. And I ended up giving this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is Bright Smoke, Cold Fire by Rosamund Hodge. Now, I almost didn't want to read this book because I had read the author's debut novel and I thought it was okay, and then I heard really bad things about the second novel from one of my friends who has sort of similar taste as I do in books, so I skipped that. But then I couldn't resist this one because it was basically being pitched as Romeo and Juliet meets Sabriel. So yeah, I downloaded it, I read it, and I'm actually really probably a black sheep on this because most people I've seen did not like this book. I actually enjoyed it. I thought that her take on this Romeo and Juliet story was really, really interesting. It was really different from a lot of things I'd read, and I think it might have helped that I am partial to Romeo and Juliet already because that's the first Shakespeare play I ever read and the first one that I fell in love with. I also really liked the way that magic was used in this book. I thought it was really interesting. It really added something to the plot, and the plot was really great. Like, it just kept me reading because I just needed to know what happened. If I were gonna point out a weakness, I'd say it was the characters. I wasn't really in love with any of them, and I didn't really feel connected to any of them. And I actually did not realize it was gonna be a duology until I finished it. I am not averse to this because I actually do want to read the second book now and find out what happens next. And I gave that one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I'm gonna be talking about was our Flights of Fantasy book club read, and that book is Troubled Waters by Sharon Shin, and it is the first in the Elemental Blessing series. And this book is basically about Zoe Ardelais, whose father has died. She doesn't even have time to mourn her father because someone comes to pick her up because she's going to be the king's new wife. So she gets taken to the capital city, and there she actually escapes and decides that she's gonna like take a time out and not make any hasty decisions or choices until she's figured out what she wants to do. Only to discover later on that she's actually the prime or the head of a particular family, which gives her special elemental abilities. The beginning of this book was really slow for me because I wasn't expecting that it was going to be a lot of like internal conflict for Zoe, and it was mostly descriptions of the world. But then when things started picking up and Zoe started like doing things, I got really into it, and I thought it was so compelling, utterly readable, very slow burn romance in this one. Excellent secondary characters and relationships, and I really ended up enjoying it. Like, I finished it and I was really eager to get to the next one as well. I ended up giving this one a 4.75 out of 5 stars. I actually finally read my very first Patrick Ness read ever, and it was because I actually got to see A Monster Calls this past week, and it was amazing, you guys. It was so good. Like, I loved it so much, and I sobbed. Obviously, I read A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and this is and the idea was from Siobhan Dowd, and this is illustrated by Jim Kay. And let's talk first about the illustrations because I think they really added something to the book, and I just think that that is so fantastic. Moving on to the actual story itself, I did not cry, even though people assured me I would. I think it's because people kept telling me I would that I didn't, which is quite a shame, but I was really moved by this story. I think it's the kind of story I like reading because there's so much imagery in it, first of all, and it's like a combination of the real world and the fantasy world, and I really, really love that. And I think it's such a simple story, but it just hits you right where it could hurt the most, and that was just a really, really strong thing for me, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad I finally read it. And yes, I do feel encouraged to read more of his books, so that's gonna be happening. Anyway, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book is P.S. I Like You by Casey West. It's basically about a girl named Lily. She has this habit of writing in her notebook and like getting lost in her own world in class, so her teacher bans her from doing that. So she ends up writing song lyrics on her desk. The next day she finds that someone has actually replied and continued the lyrics of the song. And from there grows this exchange between her and this anonymous pen pal, and it gets really personal and she starts liking this person. There are a lot more secondary characters than I expected, which I absolutely loved. I adored her family, I adored her best friend, and I also really thought the romance was cute. I was like totally happy about it, even though I guessed right away who it was. If you are just in the mood for something light and fluffy and something that'll make you smile, then definitely check out P.S. I Like You. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The second to the last book that I want to talk about is The Goal by Elle Kennedy, and this is the 4th and final book in the Off-Campus series. And now that I've read the 4th book, I can definitely tell you guys that this is my all-time favorite NA series. This 4th book is about Sabrina James and John Tucker, both of whom you will have met if you've read the other books in the series. I thought it was so adorable, guys. I just thought the romance was really cute. I really loved John Tucker. Like, he just stole my heart. He's like this southern mama's boy, and he's just so, oh, I just loved him. And Sabrina was a little harder for me to warm up to, but I so admired her drive to succeed and her hardworking nature, and just like the fact that she wanted to be able to stand on her own 2 feet, and I respected that so much. There were so many like appearances from the other characters I love in the series, which was also really cool. I just absolutely enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend reading this series if you are into NA, or even if you aren't and just want to try it. It's really good. I gave that book a 4.75 out of 5 stars. As of right now, when I'm filming this video, I haven't finished this book yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna finish it tonight. And I love it, guys. Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, which is the 2nd book in the Six of Crows duology, and oh my goodness, it is so good, you guys. Like, oh my god, I love these characters. I care so much about what happens to them. I freaking love this plot, and I just know that this book is gonna get 5 stars. Anyway, there you have it, guys. Those are all the books that I read in the second half of September. Did you guys read anything interesting? I would love to know down below. If you've read any of the books that I talked about, and share my feelings, or even if you don't, I would love to hear about that too. I will be seeing you guys next time for another video. Goodbye!